Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Here's a quick flick through of the project that we'll be making during this video. It's a lapbook which I've previously shown in other videos, so do check those out for decoration inspiration. So this is the cardboard that I'm going to be using for the whole base of the construction. It's actually the packaging from a duvet cover. This comes inside the sheet to give it stability. All I'm doing is cutting it down to size, and I want to make sure that I can fit a folded piece of A4 paper in there, so I just use it as a template and allowed extra room. Now this is going to be a bifolding journal, so again all I'm doing here is just creating this secondary fold or the secondary spine, because there's going to be two sets of spine. And I'm going to extend the front of the front cover, the front flap, whatever you want to call it, by sticking the excess over the top. And I'm going to do this using permanent spray adhesive because I find that to be quite strong, but as you'll see in a few moments, not quite strong enough, so I will need to reinforce this. See, just slipped right off there. I did consider using tape and then thought second against it. For quickness, I just ran it through my sewing machine, mainly because I couldn't be bothered to find the end of the tape, to be honest. So sewing machine is probably essential for this project. Yeah, pretty much essential. Don't have any special type of sewing machine though, it's just a sewing machine that I got from Aldi, so no special requirements there other than to have the sewing machine. And then all I'm going to do is layer this shopping bag. It's a Primark bag, and I'm going to create a cover with that. It's not the forever cover, it's just the underneath. If you then watch my other videos, you'll see that I used decorative pattern paper to actually create the front cover. This is just a backing almost, and all I do is I just leave a 1/4 inch gap around the whole of the cardboard, and I rip against it with a metal ruler, plastic ruler, whatever you've got, it doesn't matter, but I use the ruler because then it creates a jagged effect, and that'll be nicer later for a grungy themed journal. I do take the handles off, which you'll see in just a moment. And then just to patch those little bits of rips that I've created, I literally do just patch it up with any excess that I've taken off. Again, you don't need to do that. Don't worry about if you mark or rip any of this, because this is going to be then covered with patterned paper when you do choose to decorate it. And again, I'm just going to repeat the same process for the other side of the journal. You don't need spray adhesive, it's just what I choose to use for quickness. It dries very quickly. You can use tacky glue, PVA glue, Pritt stick, whatever you have on hand. And then what I'm going to do is, in that 1/4 inch gap that I left around the whole of the journal, I'm then going to take my sewing machine and sew in that gap. That's the reason why I left a 1/4 inch of paper around it, so I don't have to go through the cardboard, even though your sewing machine probably would, because don't forget sewing machines are made for things like denims, stitching multiple layers of denim and things like that, so you would have no problem with it going through cardboard of this thickness. But just for ease, you know, make yourself easier where you can. Again, I'm just going to do a patch there. Now don't forget, whatever colour thread you use, you're going to be able to see it throughout the journal. So I just chose a natural stony type of colour one. Yeah, but you can choose, if you know what colour you're going to decorate the journal, you could choose to do the sewing in red, pink, green, yellow, whatever colour you're going to do the journal, because then you can do lots of accents. And like I say, do check out my previous flip through video. I'll leave it in the description box down below so you can get some decorating inspiration. So you'll need a variety of envelopes and bags and things like that for this tutorial. Interchange it as you want to, depending on what size of envelopes you have. What you will find useful though is to reinforce the folds of the envelope, and I've just used washi tape, and here I've used very neutral coloured washi tape because this journal will actually be going for sale as a blank journal on my Etsy store. So I wanted to reinforce it, but with something that's quite natural in colour. So here all I've done is I've created 2 flips really with envelopes, and whenever you create a flip, put a hidden journaling spot behind it is what I've done throughout these journals that I've made. So anytime you put an envelope, put a secret journaling spot behind the envelope in the little nook of the fold in essence. So there you go, and all you do is you create the 2 folds and then you stitch them together with the sewing machine straight down the fold which you've created. No fancy stitches, just straight stitch all the way down. And then just layer up the envelopes. You could, you know, stick them down with a little bit of glue at this point if you wanted to, just to make sure that they're all in place. But yeah, I didn't choose to do that. I only thought of that actually when I watched the video back. So there you have it. Now the envelopes didn't seem to stay flat or stay down. I did use my bone folder, and that's quite important when doing these type of things. But what I did come to the conclusion of, that once they've got pattern paper on the top of them and, you know, some fabric tabs and things like that, it's all going to weight it down, so then that will hold them down more. I did consider putting a Velcro spot behind it, but that would be a final step when you're decorating it, and will be down to the recipient of this journal really. So on to making this first signature, if that's what you want to call it. So I just took a piece of A4 paper as the base. You can tea or coffee dye it as you want. Mine is quite heavily tea dyed. And then I'm just taking excess of the bag to create another page in essence. Again, it doesn't matter that there's writing on the back, that can be covered with patterned paper. And then to create something that's tri-folding and that will fold out, you can take something that's bigger than A4. This is an A3 pad. So yeah, that will allow for you to create much more flips and folds in the journal. And all I'm going to do is just cut this down to size, and I will use the excess later on in my journal in the other signatures. And again, just to create a little bit more interest, I'm just going to sew on some envelopes. This is just simply, it's not necessarily a tutorial video, it's just more of a process that I've followed, just to try and give you a little bit of inspiration of how to create this, and then you can add and take away bits as you wish. All that I would ask is that if you do create a journal using this tutorial, just let me know so I can have a look at it and get some inspiration for myself as well. It'd be nice to know how I've inspired you. And again, so there's going to be a fold there, so I'm just going to add in some paper, and as always my paper trimmer has teared the paper. So I'm going to sew that in. I guess you could do this tutorial but use your traditional, is it a three Copic stitch or something like that, but that would be very time consuming. You'd have to do that a lot. I think the sewing machine for this type of thing is the way to go. So again, just creating something that's going to be tri-fold in here. And having pages that vary so much in sizes also does help as well. Helps create interest along the eye. And instead of stitching this, I've actually just washi taped it together. This is a Tim Holtz washi tape, so I don't doubt how sticky it is, but some washi tapes you do get that aren't that adhesive. If that's the case with the washi tape that you are using, then I would recommend that you glue as well as washi tape. And because I've created a flap there, I'm also going to put a hidden journaling spot in there. You could choose to put multiple pages behind it. I generally just choose to put 1 or 2 sheets, but you could choose to put much more. You could put 2 or 3 pages there, depending on how much writing space you actually wanted. So a lot of fiddling around with the papers, but like I say, you do whatever you want to do. So I've added an envelope there just as a little bit of extra interest as well. And generally what I do is when I'm putting interest in that type, pockets in that type of position, I'll cut the bottom of the envelope off just to allow things to be accessed a little bit easier. Okay, so all I'm going to do now is just add a couple of stitches to the middle of that signature to hold it all together, because I'm then going to use the sewing machine to sew it into the actual signature itself. So I want everything to be nice and secure. Cut away those excess strings, because when you're doing the actual stitching you don't want things to get tangled. So just checking everything lines up and that I've got the signature exactly where I want it to be, and then I just run it directly through the sewing machine just once. And there you go, we've created the first signature. Now the second 2 signatures I not pre-created these, but sort of figured out the layout before filming the video just to try and speed things up. And it was on a separate day, and I did try and hide the fact that I was wearing a dressing gown by rolling up the sleeves, but it didn't quite work, so please do excuse that fact. I'm sure we've all been there. Crafting in my pyjamas is one of my more favourite things to do. So here is my first page of the signature, and I'm just sewing a flap here, so that creates a double flap. And what I did when I actually decorated it is I made those into pockets. And then on the back here, you'll see that in just a moment, but I'm going to create some envelopes here. Couldn't quite figure out how to get the envelopes to stick first of all, so what I did was I sewed the envelopes to the page, and then I think I glue the envelopes to the page. So you'll see, so sew those down. The amount of times I had to rethread this sewing machine during this project because I was using cheap cotton thread. So there's that. So fold those over. And then I've created this little embellishment where it's just like a little flip up thing where you can do some little journaling, little collages as you wish. And I'll just sew all of those on before I finally stick this page into the signature. So that's how it will be held on. Put a little bit of glue on and then I reinforce it with some stitching. So when I used a full page envelope, I had to cut it down and then I made a little flap so I could actually put that full page envelope in, because that was quite difficult to figure out how to do that because the flap is at the top and they're typically much bigger than half a page of A4. So yeah, cut the side, created a flap and stuck that in. And then what I actually created from the flap was then a concertinaed page. And that is just a paper bag and 2 wage slip envelopes stuck together. At the last minute I realised that I've actually got a piece of scrap paper that I wanted to add into the journal. There we go, I've got that leftover concertina page there, tri-folding page, and I'll add that in. Add in a few little guide pieces. Again, it seems like that signature was filmed very quickly, so all I'm trying to demonstrate to you is that you just need a couple of pieces of paper, some envelopes to create some folds, and then put some tuck spots or secret journaling spots behind those folds. And just keep doing that. Use different sizes of paper, different sizes of envelopes, recycled paper, recycled anything, and create interest in the journal that way. So that's the second signature. So on to the third one. This one was a little bit more confusing for me, I must admit. So here I have just got a full-size envelope again. I've glued an envelope flap in there, and then I've got this little tri-folding flap, and I've created a 1/2 inch fold, and I'm going to just do a running stitch all the way down there. And then behind that tri-folding piece I want to add in this little journaling spot, but I couldn't quite figure out how to add it in. But I just did a stitch along the seam of the 2 envelopes together. But I didn't quite sew far enough down. And this is where the confusion happened. So I've used this, again, part of a recycled bag, but it's not quite big enough, you see. It's the envelope is larger. So where I originally folded for the front of the signature, you'll see in a moment that the envelope is actually larger than the page. So then I have to create a second fold. There's already a few folds in this recycled envelope, so what it actually did was it quite weakened this page of the envelope because there was just too many folds. The page obviously remembers where it's been folded, and it was just too weak, so I've had to add more embellishments on there than what I thought I would to just strengthen the page. And that's what you can do. You can add more envelopes, you can add some cardstock to strengthen the page and all that type of thing. So you'll see that as I'm going through, but it's a bit back and forthy, this signature, so I do apologise. So again, I wanted to add some ledger paper, and I also wanted to add this This one's a 3-tier fold. There's an envelope on the top and then just some folded paper underneath. And all I do is I just literally do sew that through the fold at the top. And again, because the page ended up being smaller than what I expected, I had to trim a little bit off that as well. But there you can see, look, there's 3 folds in that page opposite, so that's creating it to warp a little bit. See, it's quite buckled. I wasn't quite happy with that, so you'll see what I choose to do in a moment. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew that ledger paper there, actually underneath the flaps. I'm sure I'll do that in a moment. No, I'm going to reinforce this section first. What I do is I'm going to take an envelope and stick it across the top of the page, hoping to give the cross section of the page a little bit more stability. So that's going to go there. And again, all of these envelopes and little sections, they can be decorated as well. So they're not all going to look craft brown forever. So I'll go back to trying to add this ledger paper in, but I still don't think it's actually strong enough. So I'll go back and strengthen it in just a moment. But first of all, let's skip around and add in this ledger paper. So again, all I'm doing is just sewing it between the 2 seams. There we go. So I did want to initially add some initial pages, and I wanted to add it straight onto that brown craft bag, but I decided it's a little bit too much pressure to add onto it, so I add in a secondary page to this signature. And now I've just created a little envelope with a journaling spot. So there's my extra page that I'm going to add. It's just some craft paper that I've got in my stash. And it's just 2 pages of tea stained paper. And literally all I do is I just run my sewing machine down there to create a binding between those 2. And just trim them down because, or rip them like my paper trimmer chooses to do. Just trim them down because you don't want it too close to the middle, because it will just create a crease and it will buckle and bend. And I'm going to attach that onto the side, just trying to figure out which way best to do it, because I quite like the fact that it says invoice and it looks like that letter has come out of that envelope, so I want to be able to see the details of both. Lovely dressing gown shot there, I know. Right, so now let's finally address this buckling page that I'm unhappy with. So what I do is I take a piece of tea stained cardstock, I think it's actually watercolour paper or something like that, and I'm just going to stitch it down there so it will either be a fold back, a tuck spot, a pocket, however the person chooses to use it. But I thought that with it being cardstock, it's really going to strengthen the page, which it did. It worked very well. So unfortunately, this is what happens when you use recycled materials like a brown paper bag. So there we have it. And I'm just going to put some little guide stitches in the middle before I eventually sew it in. So there we go. I'm just going to check I've got the you know, the spacing right and things like that, and just whack in. Now with this journal, I didn't follow a tutorial. I literally just thought of the idea of using the bedding packaging. I saved the bedding packaging because I thought that's going to be a brilliant journal, and then I ended up creating this tri-folding journal from it, and the idea just evolved as I started putting paper and envelopes and tucks and things together. So that's what I would urge you to do, is watch this video as a guide, but don't take it as, you know, this is what it needs to be exactly. Let your own imagination run wild with this, because the possibilities are endless. Lots of different things you can do with this idea. So I really hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial, and do give it a go. Do let me know. Contact me on Instagram or on here. Bye.